After months of waiting, we've finally seen racing on track. The Australian Grand Prix was won by George Russell, followed by his teammate Kimi Antonelli. We saw almost the save of the season early by Colapinto. We saw a classic Ferrari strategy, and we saw the home favorite out of his home race before it even started. Welcome back to the 305K. I'm Jackson Lang along with my co host Tucker Hobart. It took us a million times to get that intro right, but we got it done. We had a
Yeah,
good, we finally started racing, as I mentioned. It was a pretty interesting race. The middle part was kind of boring, just
man.
not a
Yeah,
ton happening. But the beginning was, I don't know what else you
unbelievable.
want from the first race of regulations.
I mean, to me, it does take me back to 4 years ago, the last time we had regulation change, where we had Verstappen and Leclerc and the two best cars kind of dueling it out like that, where it was lead change, lead change, lead change. This was kind of that to a higher power because it was. I mean, there was probably 8 or 10 lead changes in the first 10 laps. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And these regulations were kind of reticent of or kind of suspicious of, and I think rightfully so with what we saw in qualifying with the downshifts going into turn 14, I think. But
Yeah.
the on track action was unbelievable. There's really no other way to put it because Charles Leclerc, obviously, that Ferrari looking rapid off the line. He got the lead into turn one from P4. Unbelievable. Lewis came up to P3. It just really looked like you could get past in a track where last year we didn't see that. And, the stat that I saw was there were about 3 times as many overtakes this year as there were
Mhm.
last year. And last year we had a race, which is kind of something that usually catalyzes a lot more overtakes. And even in the dry, the conditions were all fine this year. There was a lot more overtakes on track, so I think that is a positive sign for the regs.
Yeah, I do too. I think like the qualifying, I was texting, I wasn't that high on them. I was like, what am I watching? It's just it was frustrating. Like the poll time was 3 seconds off last year. So there are definitely, I think, issues we could say with the regs
Yeah,
that include with but that's just kind of how it might be. Like
yeah,
there
and
are
my
gonna
my
be things you have to do to get
my opinion
battery.
is that like 3 seconds from a viewing perspective, I don't feel like over the course of the lap really changes how I see it. The only thing that I really didn't like was the downshifting on straights, which it just sounds really bad when you go on board.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that you were able to get that I had to update my computer so I couldn't get, but you said the Apple TV viewing experience was great.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. There obviously Apple TV is now the provider in the US over ESPN. And since it's on demand, they have all these other options. So I had my multicast going. I had the main broadcast along with both Ferrari driver onboards and the track map of the cars going around. So I felt like an analyst out there. Although it was, 1 in the morning by the time we were into Q3, and I think I was barely able to focus on the
I
broadcast
think I fell
itself.
asleep. I literally think I fell asleep during Q3.
It
Tried
was
so
it's
long to stay up.
there's something to be said for the amount of, how quick the drivers have to get into their kind of motion to, be out there and succeed in race one. I really think it's the same way for us. It is a tough
Yeah,
race to get into. Melbourne, you know, 12 p.m. qualify, excuse me, 12 a.m. qualifying start,
it's just getting
11 p.m.
worse.
race start. This is hard conditions for us. We really have to get in there and get our hands dirty to watch this race and kind of break it down. Next week we have a 3 a.m. start, and I got to tell you, that one's going to be going on the DVR.
It's so late, and then Japan's not much better the week
Yeah.
after or 2 weeks later. I feel like we got to get into talking about the race though, because that is what
Yes.
we are here for. I think we just start at the beginning of the race, and I'm just gonna mention Colapinto right away. He
Yeah.
had so it was the V car but Liam Lawson, and he had like everyone kind of had trouble getting off the line
He had a
besides
monstrously
Charles
bad
Leclerc
start.
and Lewis Hamilton, but
And Ollie
Liam
Behrman,
Lawson
another Ferrari
just
power.
yeah, the Ferraris are just getting off the line, spectacular. But the
Hmm.
opposite is Liam Lawson and V Carb. He was practically frozen.
Yeah.
Colapinto comes around and makes an Isaac Hadjar Monaco 2023 F2 move and dodges him at the last second. And
Hmm.
you got to see the replay if you're
It
listening.
was,
It
yeah,
is
it was unbelievable.
unbelievable.
If you ever have any doubt about the skill and precision that is required in F1, that's one of the clips you kind of put on the sizzle reel for it. I mean, it was unbelievable avoidance. It was almost really terrible accident. Would have been
It would have
two
been
DNFs off the
really
row.
bad. Not only that, but he
Yeah.
was going quick and he was going to just
Yep.
smash in the back
Just
of them.
smashing the bike. Yeah.
It's
Um,
unbelievable the reaction times of these guys.
mhm.
And one little thing about reaction time, did the lights not go out as fast as you'd ever seen them? Like that red
It was
dot went
the
and it went
shortest
boom.
hold I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. I think it wasn't necessarily a reflection of Charles Leclerc specifically that he got off the line so well. I do think it's a reflection of the Ferrari because both Lewis and Shaw came off the line really well, picked up a lot of positions. But man, those two Mercedes out front really, I think, had this race won in everyone's minds for the lights. And I think Ferrari have given at least me and I think other fans hope because they seem to hold on a decent amount. And obviously later in the race, the pace kind of shifted, but it
But
didn't seem like this
they never
super
ran
lopsided
away
race
with
that we
it.
thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
I think
never ran
it was
a
down to strategy partially.
yeah, for sure. And we'll get into that in just a tiny actually, no, we can get into it right now.
Yeah.
Um Ferrari missed two prime opportunities on a virtual safety car, one caused by Isaac Hadjar's engine exploding, and one by Valtteri Bottas. Had like a technical problem. I actually don't fully remember.
Yeah, I think it was his engine exploding as well.
Okay, it might have been,
Maybe
but he
not
parked
exploding,
right
maybe
next
just
to the
turning
pit
off.
lane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this was kind of an example of you out in front are kind of determining what the people behind you do. Where I think that if Ferrari had pit both their drivers, we would have seen Mercedes at least leave one of their guys out there. And it probably would have worked out better for them considering that they have the faster car. I really was upset by the fact that through both of them, Ferrari didn't pit one guy and keep one guy out. I feel like we should have split the strategy there, especially the second time. Jackson, I said this to you earlier, but you watch the car stop in a spot where it's clearly going to have to be VSC at the very
yeah.
least. And Ferrari went right past the pit opening. And kind of right as they turned onto the main straight, you saw VSC go up on the board. And it's something that, I just feel like as a team principal, you have to be able to recognize that and say, that guy's
We
there.
need to
We are going to
box.
come in and bet on the fact that there's going to be a VSC because there kind of has to be.
Yeah. And not only that, if you go in on that Bottas one before they close the pit lane, you have a significant advantage because no one else could get in the pit lane and you're able to make up track. I don't know. It just,
Yeah, I think you would have come out at least in front of Kimmy.
yeah, it just didn't make sense them not boxing. And it's partially why I didn't pick them to win the constructors is mistakes like this that I've known Ferrari to do. And it's not necessarily the car this year, but you and me both know they make mistakes like this and that can hold them back.
That is
So,
true. Um,
and
the thing that I took for that kind of made me hopeful is I think that the development for Ferrari will hopefully equalize kind of the playing field a little bit. I think Mercedes right now have kind of a significantly better car. And I think that Ferrari are a little bit out in front of the rest of the field, but I think that they're, a step behind Mercedes. But I think that the more we get into this year, I think that the development will equalize so that we kind of have closer cars. And what I trust in Ferrari is I think that the Ferrari engine has shown better reliability. And
yes,
to what you
absolutely.
said about what you know about Ferrari, what I know about Ferrari is that we've really shot ourselves in the foot with reliability. And I think that this year they put a premium on avoiding that.
Yeah, I agree. What are they like the only engine that hasn't fully failed that we know of? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
I mean, I'm sure they failed during testing at some point, but it's looked a lot stronger. We saw a
absolutely
DNF from a Honda engine. We saw a DNF from Cadillac's engine.
Ford and
We
Ford,
saw, yeah, and we saw Williams lose two engines, which
Mercedes.
exactly.
Yeah,
So I
it's
think that it looks like it might lean towards Ferrari. And like I said, if you have these finishes where 1-2 Mercedes, 3-4 Ferrari, or 1-3 2-4, something like that. As long as they're both
yeah,
up in the front, a DNF from a leading position that could be upwards of like a 35-point swing. If
yeah,
you have a
definitely.
1-2 and all of a sudden that turns into a one and then 2 and 3 for the other team, that's a huge
Yeah.
swing. 25
Yep.
points lost is never going to be a small thing.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's going to be close. I think you're right. Mercedes have the upper hand right now, but I do think Ferrari were close at times, especially at the beginning when they were just going back and forth. Like
Yeah,
there was
there was a moment where it looked
no
like Lewis might get by
advantage
George.
there. Yeah, Lewis might get by George. Charles and George were just swapping every single race, or sorry, every single lap, and like sometimes multiple times a lap. It was great racing, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm holding out hope that like if maybe Ferrari doesn't screw up a strategy in the future, or just like we have a longer battle with no like safety car, that might be the norm, and which would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to talk about Mercedes one too because they did execute a very good race. Their car,
Yeah.
it's looking like it could be back to old ways for them. Toto was looking at the camera multiple times where it was just like I'm the evil villain, like I
Yeah.
was
He
for
gave him one
8 years.
of
Yeah,
he gave him one of
and
those.
that's a great
Um,
representation.
I think that once we saw kind of in practice three, maybe not till qualifying you really knew it, but I think practice three you were like, okay, the shackles were off.
Yeah,
It was dangerous, and I think that that car really has looked the best. I don't think that's controversial to say. I'm not really like
no,
putting out a hot take here. Um, but there's always Sunday and there's always execution, and I do think they did that well.
yeah,
Both drivers, I think, mature drives from them. It didn't go their way at the start. Kimi had a pretty horrendous start. He was down, I think, 5 positions, something like that.
yeah,
It was rough for
yeah,
him,
yeah. He had a
but
bad
he just
start.
worked back with the pace of the car over the pit stops. Really good. One of his best career finishes. Um,
I think it is his best career finish, or at least
I think
ties
it's
it.
tied for his best career finish.
Yeah,
I think that they have an opportunity to do that almost at least for the first four
yeah,
weekends.
yeah,
And I think that
absolutely.
that's the real achievable goal for them right now is to say we have the best car right now. There's no promises, you know, to say that we're gonna have the best car in June. But
Mhm.
if they can get, like I said, two, three, four 1-2s, double podiums to start this season, they can really put themselves in the driver's seat and control this constructors race. And I think that that's the most achievable position that they can kind of look at right now.
Yeah, and I want to touch up on qualifying a bit and a little bit before qualifying because um I think honestly, you want to say the MVPs of the weekend, the Mercedes mechanics.
Oh
The
yeah,
fact that they
for sure.
fixed Kimmy's car after what was a horrendous Q3 or sorry, not Q3, he practice 3 crash. I
Hmm.
I did not think he was going to qualify, plain and simple. I thought he was
Me
going to be at
neither.
the back of the grid, and he ends up qualifying P2. Who was at the back of the grid, who we didn't expect, was Max Verstappen.
Yes.
What in the world? I thought that might be Isaac Hadjar whenever I saw that crash at first, and then they
Hmm.
go, that's Max Verstappen going off. And I'm just like, what in the world?
Yeah, I mean, so the big thing about Kimmy is that that crash did give the mechanics more time to fix up that car. I think it would have been
Yeah.
really close if not. Um, for Max, it looked like a car issue on that one. It was a
Mhm.
rear lock on the rear axle. So it's one where it's really hard for the driver. Lewis had one of these in Spa last year, and you kind of just sit there and go, "What the heck just happened?" Because it's pretty
Mhm.
innocuous. It's not something that you can kind of look at as a driver. It was really when you just went to brake. And
Mhm.
I think that it's partially the car. I think it's partially getting used to the car. But that Red Bull looked a little bit shaky, and I say this without knowing much because I think they're probably the biggest unknown we have.
Yeah.
Hadjar qualified P3, looked really strong. We
Yeah.
never got to see Max with real pace. Um, and
Max had a good
once we got
comeback
into the
drive too.
race, Hadjar was sitting what P3
Something like
early on.
no, it would have been P4 because the Ferrari's in George. So
I
he would
thought
have at least been
he
P.
was, anyways. He was up there. He was looking
He was
relatively
up
strong
there.
before that engine failure, and Max obviously kind of tore through the field, finished what P5. And I think that
Yeah.
that's not necessarily that surprising to me because obviously we know they're up front, and the pace difference between any of those top three or four cars is like really drastic from the bottom seven.
Yeah.
Um, but I think they're still the big unknown. And I think that my prediction of Max Verstappen driver's title is, looking a little bit questionable, but I think it's still very much in the ballpark. I think it's right now George, Kimmy, Shaw, Max, maybe you can throw Lewis in there.
Yeah. I think there are a number of drivers. It's the first race. We still have so much racing to go.
Hmm.
There were some teams on the lower end that I thought, and specifically drivers that had impressive drives to me. Arvin Lindblad was fantastic at the beginning of the race. He
Unbelievable, yeah.
he peaked at P4. I did not expect that from him, plain and simple. Um,
Hmm.
and he
And he
finished
qualified great.
qualified well. Didn't he finish like P8 in the race, I believe? Because
That
Bortoleto was
sounds
P9.
right, I believe. I believe that's right.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, it was just a strong performance from him. It's
yep.
something that you kind of hope for as a driver, but obviously last year we saw Hadjar crash out in the formation lap in his
Mhm.
debut. So it's really a tough position kind of for a young driver. And I think that he handled it really well. It was a performance that you kind of look at and say it's very he can do that again next weekend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you see a really good performance from a rookie, and it's like, wow, that's like a shot of strong, you know, great laps, but maybe it's track specific, maybe it's just a moment of, pure talent. Um, that was a really mature, calm, collected drive that kind of
Yes.
very consistent. He qualified high. He was high throughout practice. He was high throughout qualifying.
Started the
Went into the
race
race
really
weekend,
well.
started the race well. The car pace obviously isn't necessarily
Slows it.
there, but he was, safe. He didn't get into any incidents. There wasn't anything that
Mhm.
was, it was a quiet race for
Questionable.
lack of a better word.
And that's kind of what you want sometimes. You just want a quiet race. And I
Yeah.
feel like another guy you could, two guys actually, honestly, Behrman and Bortoleto, P7 and P9
And yeah.
respectively. I mean,
And also
both
I'd
of
say
our
someone like
surprise
George.
points. George,
Obviously,
yeah,
after
I
those
mean,
initial kind of, but like when we're talking about another guy who just was banging consistent laps, I would say George. We got
yeah,
into the later part of the race, and Ferrari had a little bit of a tire advantage, and it's hard to kind of determine how much it's person, how much it's car, but he, meaning George was kind of just putting in consistent lap times and keeping that gap where it was,
mhm.
and you kind of expect that Mercedes might have had a better car, but it's still a tire difference and it's still late in the race, and you just kind of kept it consistent, stayed out in front, just drove kind of a perfect race.
Yeah, it was very impressive. I was happy for my team. I'm happy for George, especially being my driver's pick. Um, the last little thing that was pretty big deal that Oscar Piastri crashed on his way to the grid.
Yeah,
Not even formation lap on his way to the grid, like 30 minutes before the race. And I checked my Twitter just randomly, and all of a sudden, Oscar Piastri's out of his home race. I was like, what in the world? And I saw things saying that fans started to leave like right after that, which is crazy to me. It's just that you
yeah.
leave a race like that. But
I mean,
so
yeah. It reminds me of last year. I think Leclerc did this in Miami. I can't remember if it was a sprint or the actual race, but similar thing, except that that one was kind of in the rain, and he was on dry tires because it was going to clear up. So it was like a little bit more. You're like, okay, like I see why this happened. Oscar just binned it in kind of like clear
yeah,
weather. It was really strange to me,
he said he
and
got like
maybe
wheels, like a bit of wheel spin or something, but
yeah. But I mean,
I don't know.
unless he was like having a smoke break in the cockpit, I don't really understand how that happens.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and it's such a shame because you get one home race a year, unless you're well Logan Sargent, then you get three, or Kimmy, and you used to get two. But
Or you're at
um,
Piastri and now he's Japan. I think he's a
oh
quarter
yeah, I
Japanese. He
for
was
yeah,
adopted by Leclerc, so he's got Monaco too.
he does have Monica.
Um,
He'll have a well, he doesn't have a true home race, or he's crashed out of it now.
yeah,
Anything else we need to mention? There was a
I do
lot.
want to point out my Williams big flop pick was bang on. I mean they had a really weekend. The curse of 305K is back. I mean,
Yes,
two
well, the big
cars, two
flop
cars
didn't
breaking
hit.
down,
Yeah,
poor kind of qualifying, poor race pace. Just,
it's
it's like we
back.
never left.
No, we're back. We got another episode coming out later this week. We'll have our China preview, which China's a weird
Hopefully it'll be
track,
good.
man.
It's a weird
Uh,
track, and it'll be interesting to see how, I think there's more kind of long sweeping corners. We'll see how that affects the arrow, which teams
and a
look
long
better. Because I
straight
think we
too.
could, yeah, that is definitely true. Well, we'll see, because I think that we could see a big switch in who's kind of like the dominant team. Obviously, I think Mercedes are still favorite in my mind, but it could be Ferrari comes out, looks good. It could be McLaren, it could be Red Bull. We really don't know.
Yeah. Yep. That's why we watch, man. That's why we watch. Um, it was a great weekend. I think overall we can say it was a success. Great. We're getting good racing. We'll be
Mhm.
back to you later this week. We appreciate you guys for watching. So long.